You are listening to the Soul Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Crystal Hill, Soul Leadership Mentor, Embodiment Coach, and the founder of Crystal Hill Publishing, where we give conscious leaders a platform to elevate their businesses to the next level, to increase their impact and influence in order to awaken and empower humanity into greater and deeper levels of connection and sovereignty. You are in the right place if you are looking for inspiration and tangible tools on all things awakening, empowerment, and enlightenment. To move out of the old paradigms of doing business and life into a new era where we lead from our soul's knowing, connect from our hearts, collaborate, and create communities that celebrate uniqueness. I am so excited for this very first episode of the Soul Leadership Podcast. And today with me, I have Emmi Mutale, and she is an intuitive healer, energy medicine practitioner, and shamanic womb priestess and teacher, dedicated to reawakening the feminine wisdom. She is an initiate to the South African shamanic lineage and trained in womb shamanism, as well as in Zen Shiatsu and Yuzui and Lictarian Reiki. Emmi is also an advanced EFT, matrix imprinting, and heal your birth protocols practitioner. And she's combining all of those things in her practice with her clients. In all of her sacred work, she's going into deep healing and transformation with women of all ages, holding a safe and protected and non-judgmental space for the emergence of authentic connection, profound knowing, and inner power. These qualities are just so beautiful, Emmi. So welcome to this podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It is such a blessing to be part of this.
And we've also got Karen Neaton. And Karen is a registered nurse. And for the past 31 years, she has helped thousands of patients recover from surgery. 8 years ago, she worked with an intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy practitioner. And this experience has helped her to see the link between physical health and emotions. And Karen, you can share more about this yourself later, but I remember you've had such a profound experience and transformation in this that you've decided to study this yourself and are now taking your own clients through this to really create a bridge between that emotional intelligence and helping it to heal, in the sort of more institutionalized medicine. So welcome to this podcast. I'm so happy to have you here as well. And maybe we'll start with you, Karen, for you to share just a little bit more about that journey and how that has informed the writing of your chapter in Fearless Presence.
I ended up at a practitioner, an ISTDP practitioner, out of desperation. It wasn't something that I sought out, which is a little bit different to marketing to clients because you're actually asking them to sort of consider something. Whereas for me, I was at rock bottom. I didn't know where to turn, and this person just landed in front of me. So I actually am really amazed at clients that show up and choose this for themselves because it's actually really hard work. And I think back to where I was at the time, I had such limited choices that I just immersed myself in the work. And so, for me, that was where I was at. I did the work and it just changed my life. So I'm so grateful. I guess this is how experiences push us into being more and to being better and to growing. So I know without that, I probably wouldn't have taken the option to do this work. So for that, I'm very blessed. So that's how I got there. Yep.
Thank you. And Emmi, I know that you've gone through an incredible journey of personal development as well, and really diving very deep into your story and your ancestral story. And that also brings us to the topic of today's podcast, which is the Sisterhood Wound. So I'd love you to share a little bit more around that.
Absolutely. So for me, the sisterhood wound is really about the collective experiences of women within the centuries of patriarchy that we have been programmed to live in, that we have been born into. And it really is about the fact that we have, in a very systematic manner, been made to forget our power and the collective power when women come together. And for me, this manifests as the sister wound. I call it the sister wound. And this is all about women, rather than lifting each other up, tending to push each other down, us competing with each other, us comparing myself to other women, us there's this sense of judgment and criticism that tends to overshadow a lot of friendships and business relationships and working relationships, as well as the fact that there very often is a sense of betrayal in these relationships and these connections. And it can feel very scary and threatening for women to form friendships of trust and working relationships with other women because of the experiences we might have had in our own lives, based on our own life and soul experiences, but also based on stuff that we carry through our lineage, the stuff that we've taken, especially from the maternal lineage, from our mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, through past life experiences, as well as the collective experiences of women all around the world. And the chapter in Fearless Presence that I contributed is very much about my own personal experience with the sister wound and how going through a really deep crisis in the sense of having been betrayed by somebody I trusted and was planning to work together with led me to the realization that it actually had very little to do with what my friend did and said, but more about the fact that I was holding on to the collective wounding around sisterhood from my own life and from the collective experiences.
Beautiful. You're putting it so eloquently. I'd love you to go just a little bit deeper into this, because I know all women have experienced this sister wound that you speak of. It is so ingrained in us, and it really requires a conscious reprogramming at the cellular level, which is the work that you're doing now. And I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit more where you feel like this core wounding has come up in. And I believe that, in my experience, it always takes me back in my past life regressions to witch hunts and things like that. So I'm wondering if you can share just a little bit more around that.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned the witch hunts. That certainly is an experience that continues to live in the matrix, in the energy field around us. And it is something that all of us women carry within ourselves to some extent. Some of us feel it more strongly, some of us feel it a little bit, and some of us are not yet conscious of it. But by virtue of having been born into these bodies as women in this lifetime, we are impacted by the sisterhood wound. We are impacted by the centuries of oppression under patriarchy. And one especially potent healing experience for myself was indeed working with the burning times, the witch hunt times, where a woman who in that lifetime was a very, very dear friend of mine indeed betrayed me by claiming that I was a witch, which led to me being burned on the stake. But she had to do it in order to protect herself and her family and people around her. Because if she hadn't done that, she probably would have been killed herself. So she did for her own good and the good of her family. And that is completely clear. But can you see how the sense of betrayal starts to spiral out from that? And the healing and the forgiveness process from this particular past life experience actually ended with me and my friend agreeing, making a sacred covenant between the two of us that no matter what happened, we would not betray each other. We would not denounce each other. And I still have chills when I talk about this, because the final scene was literally me and her standing hand in hand with our feet on Mother Earth, rooted, grounded, and strongly in our fearless presence, knowing that nothing was going to change our bond and our friendship. It didn't matter at that point whether we were going down together or up in flames together. That was absolutely not the point anymore. The point was that we had agreed not to hurt each other, and we were going to live by that.
Yeah, that's giving me chills as well. It is so powerful. And then to think, how do we relate that to today? When, how do we translate that? How do we live by that? How can we stop betraying each other? And it really comes into that theme of being fearless in our presence and not allowing the patriarchy and not allowing us to be controlled by abusive programming, not buying into it, to really creating those very powerful, strong boundaries. And that, Karen, I believe, is something that you've done through your journey and your experience with your sister. So I'd love you to share just a little bit about that.
Yes, that's true. When I was listening to Emmi's speaking about the witch hunt, I thought, yes, I was actually subject to a witch hunt. I have been through it with my sisters and my mother. So, and something else that came up for me when Emmi was talking about her friend, putting her out there to be burnt at the stake to save herself, I'd probably call that scapegoating. And so, I've experienced that as well. So yeah, that is a big part of what I had experienced. And what I realized is that these were the patterns that operated in my family. I have a very big extended family, and I can see the patterns. But what that meant is that we were all living unconsciously. We were just living these things out, and it was a way of being, and nobody questioned it. So when I was able to understand what they call in psychotherapy the triangle of conflict. So we have an emotion. So this is how it becomes emotion-based and how we can heal ourselves through understanding and being able to hold and process our emotions. So there's an emotion that triggers anxiety, which makes us feel uncomfortable. So we can break out in a sweat, or whether it's the racing heart or diarrhea. And people don't like to feel like that. We understand that. So what they do is defenses come in to then mask the anxiety. So something like betraying somebody, that's actually to stop you feeling anxious about the conflict you're feeling about what you're in. So do I betray my friend? Do I protect my family? This is a conflict, right? And so underlying this are conflicting emotions. And when you can hold those two together, you don't need to A, become anxious, or B, become defensive. So none of this acting out unconsciousness happens in your life anymore. You can recognize the feeling because you're embodied. You know what the feeling feels like. You recognize the conflict. You're not judging yourself. And so you can just be. You can be in situations that are unknown. You can be in situations that are painful, that are new. We don't have to have pre-programmed way of being with people. We can just be ourselves. We can just respond authentically because we recognize deeply in ourselves the conflict and the feelings. So we're not unconsciously acting out. We don't scapegoat anybody. We don't need to be on a witch hunt anymore. We can own our own conflict. Yeah.
Beautiful. These are very powerful tools. Thank you. And what is, for you, Karen, what is one thing that you would love your clients to know about you?
Okay, so this might be a little controversial, but I want them to know that I'm not an expert, that I don't position myself as an expert because it gets in the way of my work. So we would call that the defense of omnipotence. So if the therapist embodies omnipotence, then it can lead to educating people or minimizing the client's experience or intimidating them. So, and when the client holds the therapist in an expert position, then it can lead them to, feel helpless. And so an example of this is when the client turns up and then wants you to fix them. And so this prevents the clients experiencing their own agency, which is crucial to healing and being, sustainable in the way that we move forward and live in a new way.
By you not putting yourself on a pedestal, you're really putting the power back on the client so they find their own answers from within themselves. You're seeing the client in their own power where they're perhaps not yet able to see themselves in that.
Yes, it's really important in the work that I do. that we recognize that the person that sits in front of us is an expert in their own life, in their own experience, and that's validating in itself. So to enable that to happen, we can't put ourselves in an expert position. So we place them as an expert in their lives, and then we become curious and we want to understand their situation, their patterns, their anxiety, so that we can then help them to detangle that from what's unconscious and make it conscious, and then build up their capacity to bear their own experience. So, expertness gets in the way of my work. So I want my clients to know I'm not going to turn up as an expert with you. So, I just love the example of Dr. Catherine Hamlin. She's a beautiful Australian doctor. And at the very start of her career, she moved to the beautiful Africa where Emmi lives. And, she wasn't an expert, but she performed surgery, and she, she was never, ever referred to as an expert surgeon, but she was talked about as a kind surgeon who helped women when no one else could. And that empowered an entire community. So this is how I want to be viewed. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. And Emmi, what are your clients coming to you for? What do you help them with?
Thank you, Crystal. So I believe that when women connect with the deep, ancient feminine knowing within themselves, when they learn to love themselves exactly the way they are, and when they have the courage to step fully into their sacred feminine power, that's when we start to see shifts and changes on a global scale. And that's when we really will witness the paradigm shift from patriarchy into something that brings in much more balance and harmony and a sense of unity consciousness. So generally, I do tend to work with women, sometimes with men as well, but at the moment, predominantly with women. And these are women who recognize that they carry some sort of deep wounding within themselves, but they might not be able to quite put a finger on what is going on for them. They have been silencing their voices. They have been keeping themselves small. And they know that there's so much more they could give to the world, but just haven't quite had the courage to do that, or something is blocking them subconsciously. So they come to me when they are ready to do some deep healing, when they're no longer afraid to look into the shadows, when they are ready for what I call a deep dive and rising high kind of a journey, where we go deep into the wounds and we look for the root cause, the actual underlying cause, core issue that is currently manifesting for them in different ways. And we start to peel the onion layers back one at a time in search of that core issue. And once we identify that, we work with that, we heal it at a very deep cellular level, so that it's not just talking about it and having cognitive shifts about what's going on, but actually working with the emotional and the energetic charge that's inside the body. And that needs to be released for you to really be able to experience that sense of expansion and that deep healing that will then have ripple effects on your own life and on people around you as well.
Beautiful. Do you find that sometimes the core wounding is completely surprising to a client of where sort of the surface behaviors are coming from?
Well, absolutely. In so many sessions with my clients, at the end, they say, "Oh my goodness me, I did not realize that this was connected to that."
Exactly.
So it's
yes.
facilitate that dot connection process and the magic that happens when people start to realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm still reliving that, or I'm still holding on to beliefs from that time and that memory and that incident. It's incredible.
It's like you really are a magician to kind of connecting the dots, connecting the puzzle pieces, because you've got an awareness of human behavior. You're connecting the client to their own innate wisdom that they don't have access to in their everyday life. And so that's how they then can make those realizations. And I believe, Karen, that is the same for your work, right?
Yes. And I video record my work. It's part of quality control. It's part of being able to revisit the session and microanalyze what's happened. And sometimes, I get help from a clinical supervisor. But capturing that aha moment on a video is just priceless, because just that breakthrough, that recognition, that relief, that it's just a beautiful moment to just replay on a video. And equally for clients to see what they look like when they recognize something, they've learned something, or they've remembered something, or they've connected something. It's just a beautiful look on the face when that happens, and the whole body changes. It's a breakthrough. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to get back to you writing your chapter in Fearless Presence. What was that process like for you? You've had your theme, you knew what you were going to write about, and then when you started writing, what shifted did anything shift for you? Did you gain deeper clarity into your work? I'd love to just for us to talk a little bit more about that, and maybe we can start with you, Emmi.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I wanted to start by just saying that I've been wanting to write a book for a long time, for many, many, many years, and it's been in the etheric pipeline for a long time. And and in fact, in the beginning of towards the end of last year, in fact, I had actually set a goal or a dream for myself that by the end of 2021, I would be a published author. And then a few months later, your beautiful project comes up, Crystal. And it was like an immediate yes. This is it. This is the gateway to me doing what I really want to be doing. And the whole writing process was really magical for me. I was completely in the zone, in the flow. And I always, before I write, I connect to Mother Earth, I connect to the Great Mother, and I call in my guides and my support system as well. And for me, the process was absolutely about affirming and confirming that this is one of the things I really want to be doing in my life. And I definitely want to birth my own book, at least one book as well in the future. And it really just helped me to consolidate how far I have come on my own journey and how I have stepped into my fearless, sacred feminine power and my own presence where I see my own worth. That's been a long journey for me to really to get to a point where I value myself and my own worth. And the writing of the chapter really helped me to understand that, wow, all this work that I've done on myself and all the work I've done on my clients and everything I've learned from them has really helped me to cross so many boundaries, to crush so many barriers. And yeah, there's no more silencing my voice at this point. I am in my power and I am ready to what I need to do.
Beautiful, absolutely. And you express it so powerfully, and it's such a clear message and such a beautiful gift that you hold. So absolutely. Thank you. Karen, what about you? What was that writing process like for you?
Well, for me, in my work, it's all about the client. And I ask them to do some very emotionally brave things. So for me, having my story or part of my story there and available that people can go, okay, she's done the work or she has a story. To me, that can allow clients to go, okay, she's not just the Wizard of Oz sitting there behind, a pashmina or something and asking them to do something that she's not willing to do herself. But it's not appropriate to use the client's time, to share about myself. So for me, that's there. And they can read that about me and they can understand, part of my journey. And I think that adds towards your vulnerability, your transparency, your credibility. And so for me, it's great. It's a bit more than a business card or a flyer. It is actually, quite a vulnerable sharing. And I'm happy to do that, but it's just not appropriate with my clients. So now it's there. And I think it will be a great tool for those that need to know that I've done the work.
I love that. So that's a powerful motivator to come into a book like this, to give a little bit of background about who you are and the journey that you have been on and the many challenges and the many transformations that you have gone through in order to be in that position that you are in now, where you can really help your clients from an embodied and lived experience. Yes, I love that. So what I'd like to hear from you now is, we've heard a little bit about your wisdom. What is one thing, if people want to go deeper with you, how can they find you? And what is one offer that you would like to share with them? Let's start with you, Emmi.
Sure, absolutely. So people can find me through my website, femininerevered.com. I'm also on Facebook at The Feminine Revered. And the free gift that I would like to offer at this point is a free ebook on the 5 core feminine wounds, of which the sister wound is one. And the 5 core feminine wounds is really centered around my own body of work based on my own personal life experiences, as well as the experiences of my clients from all around the world that I've been working with for many years now. And in this ebook, you get an introduction to the mother wound, the sister wound, the body wound, the menstruation wound, and the womb wound. I'm not going to go into more detail about that right now, but you're welcome to download that book from my website at femininerevered.com. And I also wanted to extend an invitation to listeners who might be aligned with the kind of work that I do. For the first 5 women who reach out to me, I will be gifting a complimentary healing session.
That's really generous of you. Thank you so much, Emmi. And Karen, what about you? What are you offering at the moment?
Okay, well, the work that I do is very experiential. So I don't have something that I can share like an ebook. So what I'd be willing to do is to give free trial therapy. We call it trial therapy. It goes for 2 hours, and it's to set up to see if your problems can be fixed and treated using ISTDP. So we always start with trial therapy. So I'd be happy to offer that for free to listeners of the podcast until the end of July.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. So if you who are listening are curious about what it's like to come into a container where you are writing your own story, I currently have 2 books that we are filling with contributors that we're looking, and applications are open. One is called Collaboration: How to Release the Old Paradigm of Competition. And the second book is called Soul Leadership: Activations and Inspiration from Way Showers and Visionaries. So if that is resonating with you and you'd love to contribute to that, do get in touch with me. And I'm very excited to sharing this and to really bringing more of this work, more of this awareness into the world, so that we can awaken and empower humanity into this new paradigm that we're moving into. So I want to thank you so much, Karen and Emmi, for firstly contributing to Fearless Presence and really sharing your voice and your vulnerability and your lessons and learnings, your wisdom that you have gained through your stories and your journey, and also for being on this podcast and your generous gifts today. So thank you very much. If you want to become a best-selling author, perhaps for the very first time, or invest in increasing your visibility, then let's connect. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you've listened to it. Leave us a review and even take a screenshot to share on your social media. Tag me in it, and when you do, you will automatically be entered into a draw to win a shout out in one of the next episodes about your business or passion. Show notes for this podcast, including all of the links to today's freebies and offers, can be found on my website, crystalhill.com/podcast. See you next time.